What's up, pod pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are checking out Podcasting Business School. It's the show where I teach podcasters how to love their show like a hobby and build it like a business. I've got my friend Fawn coming in from the Our Friendly World with Fawn and Matt podcast for a podcast audit session. Fawn, how's it going, my friend?
It is a pleasure to be here, Adam. Thank you for having me on.
Well,
Matt can't be here right now. I'm sorry.
Matt's unpacking boxes. No, we're just kind of reminiscing before we hit the live button about how she just got to a new state. I moved to a new state this summer, so we were kind of comparing notes about how crazy things are. But I'm definitely glad to get you here and get you settled in, and hopefully you're getting your new little podcasting space set up and all that. That was the fun part about my journey. Is like I get to set up a new podcasting room. So do you have like a little bunker set up or anything like that?
Actually, same here. I was so excited. I have this beautiful desk that is perfect for podcasting. We have this room with this coffee table that we podcast together. And then in the basement, I have a voiceover studio that I'm putting together. So I'm super excited.
That's a great use of basement right there.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Okay. So let's chat about your show. I want to know if we're going to sit down and talk 6 months from now and you're all settled into your new home and all that good stuff, but things have gone really well with your show. Like if the next 6 months, your show really takes off in the way that you envision it, as far as like progress goes, what would that look like for you?
It would be great to find a way to have more people listening. I'm actually amazed by the amount of listeners we do have. It would be great if I could triple that in 6 months.
Okay.
Because I feel like this is a total labor of love that we're doing. We feel that reintroducing the art of friendship into our society can help everything on every level, from the economy to a person's physical health, everything. So I would like for it to be more of a movement. I would like more hype. Hype is a terrible word for it. I can't think of another word for it.
Yeah, you want some momentum, some positive mojo, a little traction. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And I have listeners. I know they're out there, but I wish that people would actually engage with me more than they have been. Like I want more people to talk to us.
Yeah. Okay. So this is my wheelhouse. That's something that I've just fought for. And like back in 2015, when I first got started, I'm in that same position of like, man, I know I'm putting out good content. Feels like not enough people are listening and no one is talking to me. Like it's just complete cricket zone. And it's pretty frustrating, can be discouraging. So how many episodes do you have live as of today?
We have, I think it's 117. It could be 127. It's hard to say because I numbered them weird because I did roundtables. Like I did about 15 roundtables, and I didn't include those as like my regular episodes. But we're going on 2.5 years, and we never miss an episode. We want to make sure that we are there for people, no matter what. Every Sunday we come out with a new episode.
Love it.
No matter what, sick or whatever.
Yeah.
We're there.
Good. Well, if you show up for your audience, they'll show up for you. So that's one of the tried and true strategies of creating super fans. Now, when we talk about download growth, when we talk about audience engagement specifically, we really want to look at strategies on how to initiate engagement. And by that, I mean, how are we providing opportunities for engagement? And we can't just sit back and go, hey, leave me a rating and review, or hey, email me if you have a question. Because the main thing, and nobody thinks about this for some reason, when we do that on a podcast, what are our listeners usually doing when they're listening to our show? They're multitasking. They're driving their kid to school. They're working out. They're cooking dinner. They're doing other things. So if we do a call to action like that, very few will just pump their brakes and go, I got to email Fawn right now because, let's pull off on the side of the road so I can email Fawn my question. So they're going to forget. So that's why it's important. Those calls to action, they are important. That's why I'm a big fan of one call to action repeatedly for a month. Like, what's the one major thing that you just want to hit them from every angle. It's going to be in your social media. It's going to be on your show. It's going to be in your newsletter. It's going to be in different areas of your ecosystem, so that when they are sitting down at their computer, like, oh, yes, I do have a question that I want to email Fawn or whatever. Now, if we can also look at ways to just have a little bit more of a why the heck should I take action on this call to action? Because a lot of people are like, oh, it's email my question, whatever. But if you're like, click this button to submit your audio question and I'll play it on the show, that's a little different. That's a little unique. They can be a part of the show and they have their question answered live on the show. And that's a special form of engagement. So I would look at opportunities like that. I use an app called SpeakPipe for my show where, I don't even put that call to action really out there on my show. What I do is, like, if somebody, okay, great example. You're coming on my show to do a podcast audit, right? We're having this experience together. After we're done, I'll send you a follow-up email and be like, all right, Fawn, now we're pod pals. It's official. I got an official relationship going here. I would love it if you would submit some audio for my show. I'll either ask you I'll let you pick. I'll be like, hey, do you want to do an introduction for an episode where you get to introduce my show and you get to talk about your show in the introduction? Or you could do a favorite episode. Say, hey, this is Fawn from Our Friendly World with Fawn and Matt podcast. My favorite episode of Podcasting Business School is episode blah, 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 because of whatever. So it's a way for you to promote your show on my show. And it's a nice little audio clip. So those things create social proof. It pulls people that you're connected to and listeners or potential clients or whatever. Like, it gets you in each other's worlds and we're collaborating and we're creating stuff together. So I look for those opportunities. And that's why I talk about initiating engagement. I'm not sitting back and going, hey, email me with questions. I'm like, all right, like, I put this call to action out. You saw it somewhere, sign up for a podcast audit. And you like, all right, I'm in. I actually need this. And now we're going to interact here. And I'll follow up and go, hey, I would love to let you advertise your show on my show with this audio clip. And so it's always kind of like, what's that next connection opportunity? How else could I add value and create something cool where we're creating content here, but we're also going to create this other little side piece of content? Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. That is genius. That's genius. You're right. We met, I think, on Podfest, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I'm like, yeah, I have to get a hold of Adam. Oh my God, yes, please. But but I don't know. Like, I forgot about SpeakPipe. Like, I don't know how that works.
And it's free. I've got an episode where I break down all my SpeakPipe strategies. So I'll send that to you. Because you promised to send me an episode about, moving to a new town and making friends. So I'll listen to that. You listen to mine, I'll listen to yours. It'll be a nice pod swap. But I think that, like, it's a free app. It's super simple. And you think about different ways to it's just different than submit a rating and review. Everybody hears that on all the shows. But what's different is you're going, I want you to be a part of my show. So any interaction, somebody emails you and they tell you they listen to your show, a DM on Instagram, like different things that I'm doing in that moment. Number one, I'll always ask them a question like, what episode do you love the most? Or what should I be talking about that I'm not? I kind of ask for feedback on the show so I can make it better and serve them better. And then we'll have a little conversation about that. And then I'll usually hit them up and be like, hey, you're a podcaster. I'd love for you to either introduce my show or do an episode recommendation. If they say they listen to my show, then I'll ask them for a recommendation and I put those on the show. So every episode on Tuesday now, I've got a different podcaster introducing my show. And at the end, I sign off and I go, hey, and here's a fan favorite episode from a pod pal just like you. And it's somebody going, this is my favorite episode. And it's super cool because it's not me promoting my own show. It's somebody that listens to my show and it just comes off differently. And it's really nice expert positioning for me. And it's great for them because we just collaborated and created a little piece of content together. That makes sense?
That is genius, Adam. Yeah, it totally makes sense.
So, I mean, really the homework with this step, and I've got a few other ideas for you that we're definitely going to dive into, but with this step, like, you could go back. Here's an easy way to do this. Like, do you guys have an Instagram account?
Yes.
Okay. So go back to the last 10 people that followed you on Instagram and I want you to send them a voice message on Instagram and just thank them for following you. And so it could be something like this. Like I've done probably 30 of these this morning. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are when I do all my Instagram follow-ups and all these things. So I'll go, hey, it's your buddy Adam from Podcasting Business School. Just want to say thank you for following my account here on Instagram. I'm really here to engage. I wanted to prove that to you by sending you a personalized voice message. I hope you're having a great Tuesday. If you want to talk podcasting or podcasting Q&A, I would love to do that. Just let me know what I can help out with. By the way, I just did an episode on podcast audience engagement. It's episode 313. This is a common pain point for a lot of podcasters. I'll post that link in the next message. I would love for you to check it out. Boom, done. And then a lot of times, like, holy crap, like I listened to your show. I've already listened to that episode, and now you're sending me a voice message. This is super cool. Or they're like, I found your account. I'm definitely going to check out your show. And you just start a little conversation. And then you go, if they do listen to your show, you ask them for a little audio clip review, or, hey, it would mean the world to me if you could drop me a quick rating review or whatever it is that that call to action that you're promoting. Or like I'm getting ready to do a free audience engagement challenge. And I could be like, hey, is this a pain point that you have? If it is, this is a free challenge I'm doing. I would really recommend that you at least check it out. So whatever that next thing is, and it's never buy something. Like I'm never doing that from that point. Like people do buy things from me. I have programs, products, and services, but it's never like even like we've interacted in person, Don, and we like are interacting now. You're not going to get this giant sales pitch at the end. Like, I think sometimes when I do podcast audits, people are like, I wish he played the whole thing where he sells them at the end. I'm like, that doesn't exist. Like that's not a part of this thing. Like Fawn is going to be in my world a little bit deeper now. She's going to know what I do to feed the kids. And if there's a time that comes down the road, hopefully I'm top of mind if she's ready for something like that. Like that's just how I operate. So I think it's very refreshing for people that you're initiating engagement, you're jumping out there, and it'll create conversations. And then all of a sudden you'll see these people popping up, and they're the ones commenting on your posts and, oh, that was a great episode. I really like this or that. And it's all because you kicked off the conversation, didn't sit back and wait for it to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And this also helps them out. So for example, we just happen to be vegan, and we have a lot of followers that are vegan on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of them are really incredible influencers, but like if they commented and if their voice was on, and if I use that, it promotes their thing too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And like you look for that opportunity. Like for some people, they're just super fans of your show, and it's super cool if they just get to hear their voice on your show, and that's enough. But for me, I like to up the ante a little bit and go, you have to be able to do this audio clip for me. You have to promote your own show on my show. Like it's a part of, I send them a little script. It's like, hello, I am XYZ from the XYZ podcast. My favorite episode of Podcasting Business School is XYZ because XYZ. And that way I give them very specific instructions. So they're all, and I'm like, it has to be under 60 seconds. It can't be a 10-minute solo podcast episode at the end of my show. So being very specific, keeping it simple, letting people know, hey, when you hit the button, you can re-record it as many times as you want. If you're not happy with the audio, you can record it, listen to it back, re-record it. Only until you hit the send button will it actually come into my inbox. So
I love that, Adam. So Adam, this is all SpeakPipe? Is that what that is?
All on SpeakPipe. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And it's free. Like as long as, if you want to store it all in there for some reason, you have to eventually pay at a certain storage limit, but I just store it on an external hard drive so I can reuse it and I'm good to go. And that takes 2 seconds.
Speak as in speaking?
Yep.
SpeakPipe?
SpeakPipe. Yep.
Wow. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah. This is going to help. And just when we look at engagement in general, you can never go wrong by bringing listeners or potential listeners and collaborating with them in your ecosystem, whether it's an Instagram live, whether it's doing like what we're doing here. Like I know when you filled out your information, you talked about how you're in development with some offers and some potential courses or whatever. Like this is a great way. What we're doing here is great for expert positioning. And that's something that you could eventually start doing and invite listeners to come on. And like, if you're teaching people how to have better friendships and create friendships and have, that's really important in the day and age that we live in. So that's definitely something that I could see. Also looking at opportunities like what I do with my monthly Pod Pal Zoom party, where I invite 20 or so listeners on. We have kind of like, you've talked about having like round tables before. So it's a very similar concept, except you're doing it with listeners. And it's just like and that leads into, high quality relationship building, which is kind of what your show's about anyway. So this is like, it's like the art of friendship, relationship building. And so it's definitely in your wheelhouse. So I think you'll have a really great time with all that. And then the really nice thing, Fawn, is that I know some people are listening to this and they're like, man, this sounds like a lot of work. And it is. Like, it really is. But like when you start with a smaller audience, we have to get out of our head about that smaller audience and go, how can I turn this into an advantage? And the advantage is that you can meet these people. You can build real relationships with a high majority of your listenership. If you have 41 downloads per episode right now, go make 41 friends. Like, that's what we need to be thinking, not, I wish I had 41,000. Like, that day may or may not come. I know people that have, that hundreds of thousands of downloads every month, and they can't keep up with their DMs. So let's reverse engineer all that and go, let me make as many true friends and build real relationships with these listeners and create super fans, because one super fan will turn into 10 other people because they go and tell people. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're in their little circles of people that they probably have similar interests or whatever, and they're going to recommend your show. And that's still the number one way that people find out about podcasts. So it's a longer play, but it's a higher quality play. And if you do, and I definitely think you should start selling programs, products, and services. That's a definite recommendation from my standpoint here. Like, you can do so much better business-wise with a smaller audience if you do this relationship building focus and not worry about having hundreds of thousands of listeners to get sponsors and all this. Like, I won't take a sponsor because, my opinion, sponsors are a pain in the ass. So I will only sell my own stuff. And that's because I've got a real tight-knit, super fan based audience where I've legit DM'd, I've interacted, we've spoken through Podfest. Like, I've gotten eyeball to eyeball or DM voice message with so many, a very high percentage. And it is a lot of work, but it's totally worth it. So I always have to kind of put that disclaimer out. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And yeah, it's quality. And that's one of the reasons we started this whole friendship movement, because we would see so many people and they would say, I have so many friends, and really looking at it. I mean, there's a long, deeper story behind how we started this movement. But we were looking at all these people thinking they had so many friends, and really what it was just likes or followers.
Yeah.
And those are not friends. And
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. And it's the quality, and it's being able to connect with people.
Yep. Yeah.
And yeah, you can't really do that with 40,000 downloads per episode or 40,000 people.
Yep.
So that makes me feel better. Thank you so much, because I do enjoy every single person that's listening. But then there's this stress that comes in because you're listening to the outside world saying, how many downloads do you have?
Right.
How many of this do you have? And how are you monetizing? And how, and how many? And that stress takes over the genuine passion for why we're doing this.
Yeah.
And to hear you just say everything you just said really calms me, soothes me, and I feel like I'm on track again.
Good.
Just listening to you.
All right. That's mission accomplished then. I mean, that's why I exist in this space, Fawn. And like, last week, I just recorded an episode. Somebody sent me a direct message on Instagram, said, hey, I'm really struggling right now, thinking about quitting. I don't want to quit, but I'm just really in my head about it. Do you have an episode about, kind of a motivational speech for podcasters? And I was like, no, but I'm going to record it today, and it's going to be dedicated to you. And I didn't like mention their name, but they know who they are. And by the time this episode airs, it'll have been out, but in real time, it'll be next week that it comes out. But like, that's why I exist in this space, because I struggled so hard my first couple of years, really my first 3 years of being in the podcasting space. I was just so driven, and ultimately my why was bigger than the combined force of all the why nots that hit me day after day. So I just stuck with it. and I eventually figured it out. But I know a lot of people won't stick around to figure it out. So I'm like, that's why this show exists, to shorten your learning curve. I unpack all the mistakes. I made all of them, and I'm unashamed of that. I'm like, that's how I've learned everything I've learned, because I've screwed it up first. 100% truth. And I share that on the show, and I'm like, all right, this needs to be a resource so fewer people quit. And that's, kind of plug into my mojo until you build up your own. That's the mantra here. So I'm glad that has served you. Now, I got to mention one thing that maybe not, it's a simple fix, but maybe not an easy one, because we're talking about branding and we're talking about the title of your show could potentially be holding things back from a search engine perspective, but it could just be a minor tweak, which would be nice. All right. And like, I always kind of put my, what's the analogy about gloves? Like putting on like the soft gloves when I deal with this topic, because it's a sensitive thing. People get really dialed into the name of their show. It's a part of their identity. But I think if people are searching for like a relationship based podcast, your show would probably pull up, but Our Friendly World, they may not get it. Like they may not understand what that is. So like, and I mean, something like when you said the friendship movement, like that kind of hit me between the eyes. I was like, you know what, if I was doing this show, that's what I would probably call the show. But like that to me says like, okay, that's what this is about. Because Our Friendly World, it could be about like world peace, it could be about, enemies, like enemy nations dealing with each other. Like those are a few things I'm like, what could people accidentally be thinking about when they see this name? Because podcast search engine optimization is different than like website optimization and Google optimization, just because we have to think, what would somebody enter in Apple Podcasts or Spotify if they're looking for a show like mine? And that may be different. Like Google would be like, how to make friends or whatever, but they're probably not going to put how to make friends in Apple or Spotify. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we have to think they're probably going to put in relationships, friendships, networking. I don't know, like some keywords like that. So we have to put our hat on and go, what would they search in the actual podcast players? What are podcast listeners searching in podcast players? Not necessarily website stuff. So I would just kind of look at that and just kind of ponder that a little bit and see. I've seen people just make one word, insert one keyword into their episode, the name of their show. And my God, it just takes off. Like that was the thing that was just kind of damming up all the water. And all of a sudden it just broke loose and the right people found their show. So does that make sense?
I'm taking notes like crazy. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And like, if you're open to this, like definitely, I mean, I think a key word would be relationship. What categories are you listed in like Apple?
It's interesting you should say that. Society, we're listed under friendship. But I'm thinking of switching it and adding psychology to it, because everything we talk about is what major psychologists and like Brene Brown talks about, but I don't follow Brene Brown. Like I just recently started listening to her and I'm thinking, oh my God, she's saying what I've been saying for years before I even I didn't know about her. Yeah. And I don't have that degree, but I definitely, because I'm a documentary photographer and I've been doing the research for decades on this, what we're talking about. So I know what I'm talking about. I don't have an MD, I don't have a degree, but it's definitely psychology. So I'm thinking of switching it to that.
Yeah.
As well as friendship psychology.
Yeah. Like having something that I want a little bit of keyword. I want a little bit of an identifier where they go, oh, that's for me. So, yeah.
Yeah. We had loneliness epidemic in there, but I don't like it because that's negative and it turns people off, because no one wants to admit that they're lonely, but really that is what's happening with everyone. And I think everyone's taking it too personally, like they're ashamed if they don't have that close actual physical friend. Yeah. And most of us don't have that. Yeah. And I think so anyway, the words that describe our show are along that that
Yeah.
that along that end,
Yep.
but our show is actually quite positive and fun. You know, it's just commenting and talking about all aspects of life,
Yep.
really, and helping each other to thrive, helping each other to transform
Yeah.
into a better person and having a better life.
Yeah.
That's what we're about. But yeah, the wording is tricky when you have only a certain allotted amount of words you're allowed to use.
What about like if we could sneak the word relationship or relationships in there along with friendship? I think that would be an SEO bomb that we could really take advantage of. So what about like transformative friendships and relationships or something like that, or the friendship and relationship movement, or better friendships and relationships? Like I would just, the real strategy here is the title needs to be almost like not artsy and creative. I want your
Right.
content to be artsy and creative. I want the title has to be the right thing to get the right person in front of it. So very direct, almost kind of vanilla. Like podcasting business school is not like a super cool name, but it pulls in the right people. And then I can, drop my content bombs and be like, oh, this is blowing my mind. It's amazing. So like we want to have that right mix, but I would challenge you to just look at your keywords, make a little list, put them in different orders, add different identifying terms. And so you end up with something that's 2, 3, or 4 words long that has that right mix of, I know exactly what this is when I say it. My listeners, my ideal listeners know exactly what it is when they read it. And then, it's got the SEO factor as well. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. I wish I had have I actually went through schooling to learn how to podcast, but they didn't really spend any time on the development of your title. And
Yeah.
now it's scary because I don't know how that all works. Like, Adam, what if I change the title? Do I have to start from scratch, or is it kind of like when you have a website and you can still have that old URL but like have it
You can redirect it. Yeah. So
redirect it? Yeah.
yeah, I've got a rebranding episode that I'll send you to. Like this, it'll walk you through it. But
Oh,
it's
please.
basically, it's very simple. All right, very simple. You change the name in your host, like Libsyn or Buzzsprout or wherever you host, and then you'll change the image that shows up on people's phones, and it's done. And everything is already. You keep all your subscribers. It's not a new feed. It's not a new show, and you should probably. I usually use like a 3-week strategy. I do a lot of paid rebrand consults, and when people are like, "All right, just tell me what to do, I'll pay you," then I go, "Okay, here's a 3-step process," and it's usually going to be like, we're gonna do an episode where you mention that the show's gonna be rebranded. Then the next episode, kind of the last episode of the old brand, will be an explainer of why you're rebranding. Like it's all about the rebrand. And the next episode is the first episode of the rebranded show. Does that make sense?
It does.
So you don't want to just pull the ripcord and all of a sudden new show, new image, and they're just confused as to like, where am I and who is this podcast?
Adam, did you say you have to switch your host? I don't have to switch the
No,
host.
you don't have to switch your host, but in your host, you would just update the name and the show art, and that's it, and the show description, and you're good to go.
Can I ask you a question about
Of
art?
course, of course.
Art. So our art is black and white, and it's like there aren't that many black and white photos out there. Is that a big deal? Would it be better to have color?
Here's what I would do. Show art tips 101 with Adam. First thing I like is get as big, bold font as possible. So you can see like my logo behind me, like the word podcasting honestly holds me back because it's a long word and I tried to stretch it across the whole thing and it limited my space for the other. Like I won't put my big bald head up there because nobody knows who I am. So why would I use up that little, that shows up on a phone tiny, so I need big, bold letters that cover that whole square as much as possible. And I'm cool with black and white, but I want you to get some bright color and highlight one word. So friendship, relationship, whatever, hot pink, different font, something just a little spicy so that it really shows up. I think I'm a big fan of having one highlight word or color highlight that's just different than everything else that really catches their eye and they go, ooh, friendship. This is for me. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah, totally. So to reiterate, I hate being photographed, so we don't have to have the photograph there.
No,
It could just oh,
I
really? Oh
wouldn't.
my god. Yes, thank you.
I wouldn't. I
Thank
mean,
you.
unless
The
you're
the
world famous, if you're a
right.
world famous actor or something, if you're Matthew McConaughey and you're going to do the Matthew McConaughey show, yeah, your face needs to be on there. And that's all that it'll take. But for people like you and I that aren't like world famous actors or singers or whatever, it's like, all right, my face doesn't need to be on there. It just takes up space. And,
Thank you. It was torture. I'm a photographer. I don't like being in front of the camera. It was torture
yeah,
to do a photo shoot.
I
Not
wouldn't worry
just with
about it.
me in it, but with Matt, like both of us. And
Yeah, two people. That's two heads. That takes up a lot of space.
yeah,
And so the last thing on this, don't use any like real slender like cursive font or anything like that. Like whatever your highlight word is, make sure that's a different font, but still thick and chunky and different color. But make sure it's like you got to remember tiny square on a phone screen, and there's gonna be 20 other. If they search friendship and you pull up, there's gonna be 20 other shows on that screen with them. So I really like the idea of that black and white, hot pink or bright yellow or orange or something like an on-brand color, a little different font, highlight it. I think that'll turn out pretty nice for you. Cool.
I love you. This is amazing. Thank you.
All right. Well, before we sign off, let's make sure that you get to shout out your website and all that good stuff. So if somebody wants to check out your show, they want to, connect with you, or maybe you'd be a great guest for their show. How do people get into your world there, Fawn?
Well, the easiest way, we're all over the place, but it's Our Friendly World Podcast.com is our website. And from there, you can find out everything about us. Everything is on there. Our show is called Our Friendly World with Fawn and Matt, but obviously that's going to change soon. But if you go to ourfriendlyworldpodcast.com, you can reach us there. You can hear all the episodes. You can read all the articles written about us, how we started this whole movement. You can look into the photography projects. I'm a documentary photographer that started all of this. It's all there.
Nice. All
Thanks,
right.
Adam. Thank you so much.
Fawn, I appreciate you. And if anybody listening in wants to be just like my pod pal Fawn here, and you should, make sure you get signed up for Podcast Audit. Go to the website, www.podcastingbusiness.school. Get signed up, and we'll get you booked. All right. I appreciate you all for listening in. Hopefully you got something out of this session here. I'm going to send you out into the world wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you next time.